Trump's success in the US presidential election has shown the extent of frustration with the Joe Biden administration, of which Democratic candidate Kamala Harris is the second face. For Trump personally, a return to the White House could mean solving some of his legal problems and freezing the rest. But a scenario in which he becomes the first president to be sentenced to prison is also not ruled out. For the American public, his second term means a tough immigration policy and an overhaul of the environmental agenda. For Ukraine, NATO and other US allies and partners, it means a rejection of Washington's traditional foreign policy with immediate consequences. We answer the main questions about Donald Trump's second presidential term. Who will Trump appoint? Trump's campaign program was largely a repeat of his 2016 promises that were not fulfilled during his first term. Back then, some of them failed in Congress, some were overturned by the Supreme Court, and some were blocked by old-school Republicans appointed by Trump to key positions. Those did not support his economic populism and isolationist foreign policy. Since then, the former president has repeatedly said that appointing these people was his main mistake, and now he intends to surround himself with like-minded and loyal appointees. This is evidenced by the choice of vice president. In 2016, it was Mike Pence, an independent political figure from among the classic Republicans. This time, Trump took J.D. Vance as his partner, who owes his political career to Trump personally and owes nothing to Republican Party functionaries. And unlike his first term, the US Supreme Court now has a conservative majority, secured by Trump's appointments. That court has already struck down a nationwide right to abortion. What does he want to do about undocumented migrants, mass deportations? Trump's main campaign promise was the mass deportation of migrants in the country illegally. Back in 2016, he promised to deport all irregular migrants. Then, as now, their number was estimated at 11 million. But he has not kept his promise. In fact, during the Barack Obama years, the rate of deportations was even higher. But Trump's other measures helped significantly reduce illegal migration. But Biden rescinded them in 2021, and the number of illegal border crossings rose to record levels. After taking office as the 47th President of the United States in January, Trump intends to put an end to that and deport millions of migrants each year, even if it requires massive raids across the country and hits the economy. What did Trump say about foreign policy? The war in Ukraine, China, and Gaza. Trump has promised to stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine if he wins the election, and to do so very quickly, even before he takes the oath of office next January. He declined to say exactly how he would accomplish this. Democrats argued that his plan involves forcing Kiev into a ceasefire with Moscow without the liberation of the occupied Ukrainian territories and the serious security guarantees that Volodymyr Zelensky talks about. Even so, the outcome of this diplomacy could be unpredictable. Trump's first term began with attempts to reset relations with Russia and ended with new sanctions, the expulsion of 60 Russian diplomats, and the delivery of Javelin anti-tank systems to Ukraine. Barely the only element of Trump's legacy as president that both Democratic and Republican leaders agreed on was a radical overhaul of relations with China. Biden has generally continued the course he set for a much more open confrontation, and Harris has pledged in her campaign to follow it. But Trump wants to up the ante and impose a 60% duty on all imports from China. He wants a 10% mandatory duty on imports from other countries. Given that Beijing would retaliate with symmetrical measures, this could lead to an unprecedented trade war between the two superpowers, with unpredictable consequences for the US and, by extension, the global economy. Trump has also spoken out about the need to end the war in Gaza, which goes against his pro-Israel stance, but is explained by his general dislike of armed conflict. In general, the second Trump administration should be expected to reduce US interest in events in Europe and the Middle East and reorient resources toward confrontation with China. This is a course that was outlined by Obama, but was frozen in the following years. What will happen in domestic politics? Drill, baby, drill! And abandoning the green agenda, Trump promises to roll back many environmental rules and regulations, do away with mandatory quotas for electric cars, and allow new oil and gas drilling on American soil. In this regard, one often recalls his fondness for the Republican slogan, "Drill, baby, drill." These measures could set the US back big time when it comes to fighting climate change. Trump also promises to cut taxes, but he will need the support of Congress to do so. In the near future, we can expect more of an attempt to extend the tax reform that Trump passed in 2017, which expires next year. It provides significant tax breaks to corporations and the wealthiest Americans. What will happen to Trump's criminal cases? Right now, Trump is being held as a defendant in several criminal cases at once. In some, lawsuits against him were filed by federal authorities. In others, the initiative came from the states. What's more, he's already been found guilty in a criminal case involving a secret payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, with a verdict expected on November 26. In theory, Trump could still be sentenced to prison, but his election victory complicates matters. Trump is also a defendant in a criminal election interference case, and the judge is currently considering those charges in light of the Supreme Court's recent ruling that a head of state has partial immunity from prosecution for actions taken in his capacity as president. Another federal case of classified documents violations was recently dismissed by a judge who was appointed by Trump. Even if federal prosecutors continue to press these charges in Biden's remaining 2 months as president, once Trump gets into the White House, the new head of the U.S. Justice Department he appointed could drop the charges in the federal lawsuits. In addition to these, Trump and his lawyers are facing a criminal RICO Act case in the state of Georgia, which has been used in the past to target mob bosses. The charges in this case also involve election fraud, and some of the defendants in the case have already pleaded guilty, but not Trump. That case was put on hold in July when it was revealed that prosecutor Fani Willis had met with the special prosecutor assigned to the case. While Trump is in the White House, he may not worry about these cases. According to the Financial Times analysis, prosecuting sitting presidents is contrary to U.S. legal practice, and by the end of his term, he could theoretically be pardoned by the governors of individual states that pose problems for him. Does Trump's victory signify the triumph of xenophobia, or is it a failure of liberals? Trump's victory means that Americans supported his platform of xenophobia, misogyny, racism, cruelty, darkness, and hatred, according to a Washington Post article. However, conservative publicists respond to such accusations that the issue is not the intolerance of ordinary voters, but the failure of the Biden administration, from which Kamala Harris failed to distance herself. They cite the border security crisis and the rise in illegal immigration, as well as Americans' dissatisfaction with the economy among the main problems. And even though the US economy has been growing in recent years, inflation has fallen after a post-pandemic spike, and unemployment is at record lows. Most poll participants said life was better under Trump. Many voters were also disappointed in Biden's ability to protect the country from external threats. He came to power at a time when the US was not involved in large-scale wars abroad, but only supported a small contingent in Afghanistan. Now the country is most closely involved in 2 complex conflicts, in Ukraine and the Middle East, and is spending billions of dollars to support its allies and partners fighting them. Harris's defeat may be the sum of all these factors, but it may also reflect a deeper reality. For many Republicans, Trump remains an iconic, almost messianic figure who can save the country and get it back on the right track. This is similar to the role that former President Barack Obama plays in the minds of liberal Americans. But neither Biden nor Harris has been able to come close to his popularity, and they have only claimed to be alternatives to Trump. Obama and his wife Michelle actively campaigned for Harris, but in the end it wasn't their names on the ballot.